The Third Man by Graham Greene, 16. All the arrangements went according to plan. We delayed arresting Winkler, who had returned from the second berserk, until after Cooler had been warned. Martins enjoyed a short interview with Cooler. Cooler greeted him without embarrassment and with considerable patronage. "Why, Mr. Martins, it's good to see you. Sit down." "Why, Mr. Martins, it's good to see you. Sit down. I'm glad everything went off all right between you and Colonel Calloway. A very straight chap, Calloway." "It didn't," Martins said. "Oh, you don't bear any ill will, I'm sure, after my letting him know about you seeing Koch. The way I figured it was this. If you were innocent, you'd clear yourself right away, and if you were guilty, well, the fact that I liked you oughtn't to stand in the way. A citizen has his duties. Like giving false evidence at an inquest." Cooler said, "Oh, that old story. I'm afraid you are riled at me, Mr. Martins. Look at it this way. You are a citizen owing allegiance. The police have dug up the body. They'll be after you and Winkler. I want you to warn Harry." "I don't understand." "Oh, yes, you do." And it was obvious that he did. Martins left him abruptly. He wanted no more of that kindly humanitarian face. It only remained, then, that I bait the trap. After studying the map of the sewer system, I came to the conclusion that a cafe anywhere near the main entrance of the great sewer, which was placed, like all the others, in an advertisement kiosk, would be the most likely spot to tempt Lime. He had only to rise once again through the ground, walk 50 yards, bring Martins back with him, and sink again into the obscurity of the sewers. He had no idea that this method of evasion was known to us. He probably knew that one patrol of the sewer police ended before midnight, and the next did not start till 2, and so at midnight Martins sat in the little cold cafe inside of the kiosk, drinking coffee after coffee. I had lent him a revolver. I had men posted as close to the kiosk as I could, and the sewer police were ready when 0 hour struck, to close the manholes and start sweeping the sewers inwards from the edge of the city. But I intended, if I could, to catch him before he went underground again. It would save trouble and risk to Martins. So there, as I say, in the cafe, Martins sat. The wind had risen again, but it had brought no snow. It came icily off the Danube, and in the little grassy square by the cafe, it whipped up the snow like the surf on top of a wave. There was no heating in the cafe, and Martins sat warming each hand in turn on a cup of ersatz coffee, innumerable cups. There was usually one of my men in the cafe with him, but I changed them every 20 minutes or so, irregularly. More than an hour passed. Martins had long given up hope, and so had I, where I waited at the end of a phone several streets away. With a party of the sewer police ready to go down if it became necessary, we were luckier than Martins because we were warm in our great boots up to the thighs and our reefer jackets. One man had a small searchlight about half as big again as a car headlight strapped to his breast. Another man carried a brace of Roman candles. The telephone rang. It was Martins. He said, "I'm perishing with cold. It's 1:15. Is there any point in going on with this?" "You shouldn't telephone. You must stay in sight." "I've drunk several cups of this filthy coffee. My stomach won't stand much more." "You can't delay much longer if he's coming. He won't want to run into the 2 o'clock patrol. Stick it another quarter of an hour, but keep away from the telephone," Martin's voice said suddenly. "Christ, he's here, And then the telephone went dead. I said to my assistant, "Give the signal to guard the manholes," and to my sewer police, "We're going down." What had happened was this. Martins was still on the telephone to me when Harry Lime came into the cafe. I don't know what he heard, if he heard anything. The mere sight of the man wanted by the police, without friends in Vienna speaking on the telephone, would have been enough to warn him. He was out of the cafe before Martins had put down the receiver. It was one of those rare moments when none of my men was in the cafe. One had just left, another was on the pavement about to come in. Harry Lime brushed by him and made for the kiosk. Martins came out of the cafe and saw my man. If he had called out then, it would have been an easy shot, but I suppose it was not Lime, the penicillin racketeer, who was escaping down the street. It was Harry. Martins hesitated just long enough for Lime to put the kiosk between them. Then he called out, "That's him!" But Lime had already gone to ground. What a strange world, unknown to most of us, lies under our feet. We live above a cavernous land of waterfalls and rushing rivers, where tides ebb and flow as in the world above. If you have ever read the adventures of Allan Quatermain and the account of his voyage along the underground river to the city of Melosis, you will be able to picture the scene of Lime's next stand. The main sewer, half as wide as the Thames, rushed by under a huge arch, fed by tributary streams. These streams have fallen in waterfalls from higher levels and have been purified in their fall, so that only in these side channels is the air foul. The main stream smells sweet and fresh, with a faint tang of ooze. And everywhere in the darkness is the sound of falling and rushing water. It was just past high tide when Martins and the policeman reached the river. First, the curving iron staircase, then a short passage so low they had to stoop, and then the shallow edge of water lapped at their feet. My man shone his torch along the edge of the current and said, "He's gone that way." For just as deep a stream, when it shallows at the rim, leaves an accumulation of debris, so the sewer left in the quiet water against the wall a scum of orange peel, old cigarette cartons, and the like. And in this scum Lime had left his trail, as unmistakably as if he had walked in mud. My policeman shone his torch ahead with his left hand, and carried his gun in his right. He said to Martins, "Keep behind me, sir. The bastard may shoot." "Then why the hell should you be in front?" "It's my job, sir." The water came halfway up their legs as they walked. The policeman kept his torch pointing down and ahead at the disturbed trail at the sewer's edge. He said, The silly thing is, the bastard doesn't stand a chance. The manholes are all guarded, and we've cordoned off the way into the Russian zone. All our chaps have to do now is sweep inward down the side passages from the manholes." He took a whistle out of his pocket and blew, and very far away, here and again, there came the notes of a reply. He said, "They are all down here now. The sewer police, I mean. They know this place just as I know the Tottenham Court Road. I wish my old woman could see me now," he said, lifting his torch for a moment to shine it ahead. And at that moment the shot came. The torch flew out of his hand, and he fell in the stream. He said, "God blast the bastard!" "Are you hurt?" "Scrape my hand, that's all. A week off work. Here, take this other torch, sir, while I tie my hand up. Don't shine it. He's in one of the side passages." For a long time the sound of the shot went on reverberating. When the last echo died, a whistle blew ahead of them, and Martin's companion blew an answer. Martin said, "It's an old thing. I don't even know your name." "Bates, sir." He gave a low laugh in the darkness. "This isn't my usual beat. Do you know Horseshoe, sir?" "Yes." "And the Duke of Grafton?" "Yes." "Well, it takes a lot to make a world." Martin said, "Let me come in front. I don't think he'll shoot at me. And I want to talk to him." "I had orders to look after you, sir. Careful." "That's all right." He edged round Bates, plunging a foot deeper in the stream as he went. When he was in front, he called out, "Harry!" And the name set up an echo. "Harry, Harry, Harry!" that traveled down the stream and woke a whole chorus of whistles in the darkness. He called again, "Harry, come out, it's no use." A voice startlingly close made them hug the wall. "Is that you, old man?" it called. "What do you want me to do?" "Come out and put your hands above your head." "I haven't a torch, old man. I can't see a thing." "Be careful, sir," Bates said. "Get flat against the wall. You won't shoot at me," Martin said. He called, "Harry, I'm going to shine the torch. Play fair and come out. You haven't got a chance." He flashed the torch on, and 20 feet away, at the edge of the light and the water, Harry stepped into view. "Hands above your head, Harry." Harry raised his hand and fired. The shot ricocheted against the wall a foot from Martin's head, and he heard Bates cry out. At the same moment, a searchlight from 50 yards away lit the whole channel, caught Harry in its beams, then Martin's. Then the staring eyes of Bates slumped at the water's edge with the sewage washing to his waist. An empty cigarette carton wedged into his armpit and stayed. My party had reached the scene. Martin stood dithering there above Bates's body, with Harry Lime halfway between us. We couldn't shoot for fear of hitting Martins, and the light of the searchlight dazzled Lime. We moved slowly on, our revolvers trained for a chance, and Lime turned this way and that way like a rabbit dazzled by headlights. Then, suddenly, he took a flying jump into the deep, central rushing stream. When we turned the searchlight after him, he was submerged, and the current of the sewer carried him rapidly on, past the body of Bates, out of the range of the searchlight into the dark. What makes a man without hope cling to a few more minutes of existence? Is this a good quality or a bad one? I have no idea. Martin stood at the outer edge of the searchlight beam, staring downstream. He had his gun in his hand now, and he was the only one with us who could fire with safety. I thought I saw a movement and called out to him, There, shoot! He lifted his gun and fired, just as he had fired at the same command all those years ago on Brickworth Common. Fired as he did then, inaccurately. A cry of pain came tearing back like calico down a cavern, a reproach, then an entreaty. Well done, I called, and halted by Bates's body. He was dead. His eyes remained blankly opened. As we turned the searchlight on him, somebody stopped and dislodged the carton and threw it in the river, which whirled it on. A scrap of yellow gold flake. He was certainly a long way from the Tottenham Cart Road. I looked up, and Martin's was out of sight in the darkness. I called his name, and it was lost in the confusion of echoes, in the rush and the roar of the underground river. Then I heard a third shot. Martin's told me later. I walked downstream to find Harry, but I must have missed him in the dark. I was afraid to lift the torch. I didn't want to tempt him to shoot again. He must have been struck by my bullet just at the entrance of a side passage. Then, I suppose, he crawled up the passage to the foot of the iron stairs. 30 feet above his head was the manhole, but he wouldn't have the strength to lift it, and even if he had succeeded, the police were waiting above. He must have known all that, but he was in great pain, and just as an animal creeps into the dark to die, so I suppose a man makes for the light. He wants to die at home. In the darkness is never home to us. He began to pull himself up the stairs, but then the pain took him and he couldn't go on. What made him whistle that absurd scrap of a tune I'd been fool enough to believe he had written himself? Was he trying to attract attention? Did he want a friend with him, even the friend who had trapped him, or was he delirious, and had he no purpose at all? Anyway, I heard his whistle and came back along the edge of the stream, and felt where the wall ended, and found my way up the passage where he lay. I said, Harry, and the whistling stopped just above my head. I put my hand on an iron handrail and climbed. I was still afraid he might shoot. Then, only 3 steps on, my foot stamped down on his hand, and he was there. I shone my torch on him. He hadn't got a gun. He must have dropped it when my bullet hit him. For a moment I thought he was dead, but then he whispered with pain. I said, Harry? And he swiveled his eyes with great effort to my face. He was trying to speak, and I bent down to listen. Bloody fool, he said. That was all. I don't know whether he meant that for himself, some sort of act of contrition, however inadequate. He was a Catholic. Or was it for me, with my thousand-a-year tax and my imaginary cattle rustlers, who couldn't even shoot a rabbit clean? Then he began to whimper again. I couldn't bear it any more, and I put a bullet through him. Well, forget that bit, I said. Martin said, I never shall. And that's the end of part 16.